I'm done with subscriptions. Streaming, fitness, razors, vitamins. I've got subscriptions for everything in my life. They lock you in, and half the time, I can't figure out how to unsubscribe. That's why I'm so excited about the new Blue Apron. Now you can get delicious meals delivered with no subscription needed, including new pre-made options. Keep the flavor, ditch the subscription. Get 20% off your first 2 orders with code APRON20. Terms and conditions apply. Visit blueapron.com/terms for more.
When you think of skyrocketing brands like Aloe, Allbirds, or Skims, it's easy to credit their success to great products, sleek branding, and brilliant marketing. But here's the overlooked secret. The real magic lies in the engine behind the scenes, the business powering their business. For millions of brands, that engine is Shopify, making selling seamless for them and shopping effortless for us. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Aloe Yoga uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/retail, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/retail to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/retail.
Hi there, and welcome again to the Explaining History podcast. I've talked a lot over the years about the explosion in living standards that we see in America in the 1940s, 50s, 60s, and 70s. It slightly continued into the 1980s, and then slowly going into reverse. Not for the elites, or the kind of the well-to-do, but for the middle and working classes throughout the 90s and 2000s, until you find it starting to get this hollowed out inequality. And a lot is said about the second situation, but I find it really instructive to talk about the first, about the explosion in living standards. And what America was like in the immediate post-war decades, and how mass abundance and affluence began to change a nation that was accustomed to a long economic depression. Mentalities forged in the 1930s and then during the hardships of the Second World War didn't necessarily fade easily. There was a generational divide. But I think one of the things about the historical reality of mass American abundance, and it is one of the kind of the cornerstone economic and social transformations of the 20th century, because of America's ability to project its society, its ideas, and its culture overseas, and during the kind of the Cold War era and beyond, the kind of there's been a military and diplomatic Pax America, but there's also been like a cultural one as well. The wherever you go in the world, there are the kind of the signifiers and the signs of American abundance. From the films of Walt Disney to American popular culture, food, and frames of thinking about wealth and poverty. All of this, in ways, was kind of a very specific historical formulation. Um, it was able to happen at a certain moment in time, and is perhaps irrepeatable. And by that I mean if you look at the conditions of America in 1945, they are as follows. America in 1945 had not become a war zone. The war hadn't been fought on American soil. The rest of the world had experienced this, particularly the core of the world, Europe, and the emerging Southeast Asia. So Japan, China, all of Europe, the Soviet Union. And then the countries, again, places like India, where the war had been fought along India's borders, and the kind of the declining empire in Asia that the British had, all devastated, and all kind of potential economic rivals to America. So America enjoyed this extraordinary good fortune in terms of potential markets in the world, or potential economic rivals in the world, being devastated for a generation, and in the case of Japan and West Germany, under American occupation. It had a manufacturing revolution during the Second World War that was the product of state coordination. Much of the kind of the libertarian right arguments about what creates prosperity collide with reality when a kind of state-led Fordist, Taylorist manufacturing and scientific rational planning and management approach was taken to the entire economy. And under the conditions of wartime production, mass production, even the most ardent capitalist would have told you that the war was simply going to be won by the amount of trucks, Liberty ships, B-17 bombers, Liberators, Sherman tanks, and everything else that could be built. And America managed to supply every single ally. And without America's mass production, it seems almost unquestionable that the Axis powers would have won the Second World War. There seems to be absolutely no argument to suggest otherwise. The British and the Soviet Union also had manufacturing booms, but it was as nothing compared to the amount of war material that America produced. I don't want to necessarily talk about the contribution of America's armies either, because that will take us down a military history rabbit hole, and we don't want to go there because we're talking about abundance. America had an abundance of raw materials, an abundance of cheap energy, an abundance of world markets, and it had a relatively stable society upon the return of its fighting men. America was wise enough to ensure that returning soldiers were given ample reward in a way, and we're talking about the white soldiers here under the GI Bill, and we're able to see a flowering of businesses, of home ownership, of tertiary education, Um, and these kinds of these measures were not only just seen as moral and fair, they were also seen as clever demand management, because there are certain industries, particularly the aircraft industry, that go into deep recession the moment that the war is over. So today I'm going to look, I haven't looked at it for a long time, Grand Expectations by James Patterson. And the last time we looked at this book, we were looking at mass abundance, about this was the biggest economic boom in history. And so one way we can measure prosperity is through car ownership. The British car ownership really began to struggle after car manufacturing began to struggle after the war, and American car manufacturing obviously exploded. Automobile manufacturers profited enormously from the new abundance and the new affluence. Sales of passenger cars jumped from 6.7 million in 1950 to a record 7.9 million in 1955. In that year, GM, which sold roughly half of these cars, became the first American corporation to earn more than $1 billion. GM had assets greater than those of Argentina and revenues 8 times of those of New York State. Defense Secretary Wilson had a point in saying that what was good for our country was good for General Motors and vice versa. GM, in other words, and other auto manufacturers had special success in persuading Americans to turn in or dump their old models. Some 4.5 million cars were scrapped annually in the 1950s, and to buy sleek, multicolored, gas-guzzling, chrome-encrusted conveyances featuring, after 1955, sweeping and non-functional tail fins. The driver behind the wheels of such garish but powerful wonders was king of the road, owner of a chunk of the American dream. By 1960, nearly 80% of American families had at least one car, and 15% had 2 or more. There were at least 73.8 million cars registered, as opposed to 39.9 million 10 years earlier. Many contemporary critics assailed the vulgarity of these automobiles. I know Theodore Adorno, in his book The Culture Industry, writes about automobiles. There's something to be said for the design, the futurism, the kind of the sort of futurist design of the American car industry of the 1950s, where, due to the kind of the popularity of pulp science fiction and the kind of entry into the rocket age and the beginnings of the space race, there are many car manufacturers that wanted their cars, the Fords and Chevys and their Chryslers and Studebakers, to look like spaceships. The new cars, one said, looked like chorus girls coming and fighter planes going. Another likened the cars to jukeboxes on wheels. But these critics missed the point, which was that that millions of Americans had fallen in love with cars. The bigger and flashier, the better. Automotive design, and its most flamboyant from 1955 to the early 1960s, expressed the dynamic and materialist mood of the era. The designs deliberately recalled the lines of jet planes and generated a streamlined, futuristic feeling, one that was emulated in many other products, from toasters to garden furniture to new kitchens that featured all manner of sleekly crafted electrical conveniences. Many of these kitchens led into colonial-style living rooms, but Americans did not seem to mind the contrast. The TWA airline terminal in New York, designed by Eero Saarinen, captured this buoyancy. So did Dulles Airport in Virginia, also by Saarinen, and other new buildings with soaring butterfly roofs, bold cantilevers, and forward-leaning facades. The Baroque bender of contemporary design, the historian Thomas Hein explains, revealed the outright and thoroughly vulgar joy that many prospering Americans felt in being able to live so well. There's some interesting things I think to say around kind of taste and on what it is and how it is socially constructed, and ideas of kind of good taste and bad taste and vulgarity and kind of kitsch as well. You know, when people look now at the aesthetics of the 1950s, I mean, there are things that you could arguably call kind of design classics, jukeboxes and Studebaker cars and things like that. And but part of what we look backwards, and I'm looking from the outside at America, um, and can only see it from an outsider's perspective. But all of us, wherever we live, are not living in the social and economic conditions that existed after the Second World War in the United States of America. Even if you live there, you don't live in the same America. It's an
This holiday season, Instacart is bringing magic to the people who make it magic for others. Get delivery and deals on everything you need this season. Whether it's a last-minute holiday decor emergency, coverage for the holiday party, or just avoiding going out in the cold, Instacart is here. Plus, November 24th to December 23rd is Deal Month, with savings from your favorite retailers and deals on grocery, electronics, beauty, toys, and more. Download the Instacart app to get a little magic delivered today. When you think of skyrocketing brands like Aloe, Allbirds, or Skims, it's easy to credit their success to great products, sleek branding, and brilliant marketing. But here's the overlooked secret. The real magic lies in the engine behind the scenes, the business powering their business. For millions of brands, that engine is Shopify, making selling seamless for them and shopping effortless for us. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Aloe Yoga uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/retail, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/retail to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/retail.
entirely different place. It simply has the kind of the cultural and social memories of that period. Um, and it's easy for us to kind of to imagine that period, but of course the moment from the 1940s to the 1970s arguably is an unrepeatable one. The America that many people, the America that many people have lodged in their heads, the America of fast cars and westerns and gangster movies and hamburgers and Coca-Cola and rock and roll and all that kind of stuff, comes from a very specific historical moment, and it's one that has gone and probably isn't going to return. It was just this sort of pride that Vice President Nixon expressed in 1959 when he bragged truculently about gleaming American kitchen conveniences at a trade show in Moscow, a show that the New York Times called the lavish testimonial to abundance, in order to remind Khrushchev and the world of the fantastic economic potential of the American way of life. All these developments promoted grand expectations, especially among the educated middle classes, about the potential for further scientific and technological advances. This optimistic spirit, the feeling that there were no limits to progress, defined a guiding spirit of the age, and over time unleashed more and more powerful popular pressures for expanded rights and gratifications. I think science fiction is very instructive here. That the science fiction drama of the 1960s is, of course, Star Trek, which is, a show that was more successful in its kind of afterlife than it was during its original run. But the idea behind Star Trek, behind Gene Roddenberry's vision, and I discovered the other day that Gene Roddenberry was a civilian worker for the LAPD. I don't think he shared many of their values, fortunately. The idea was that a condition almost close to kind of a perfected communist utopia exists in the Star Trek world, and that science and advancement and progress and rationality has essentially cured all of the world's problems. And now the crew of the USS Enterprise are traveling through space simply to explore it and to catalogue it and to understand it and to find out what's out there. And this is the pinnacle of our faith in science. If you look 20 years later into the emergent cyberpunk writing, where a combination of the sort of the logic, the final logic of kind of corporate power, corporatized capitalism, and the inversion of technology, the way that technology inverts utopias into dystopias, plus the kind of growing understanding of environmental collapse. You'd had people like Rachel Carson and the book Silent Spring long before that point. There's a remarkable change from unbridled optimism in the 1950s and 60s to a much more cynical and fearful view of the future. And I suppose what you see when you see things like you read William Gibson or you look at Blade Runner is you're looking at the aesthetics and the culture and the philosophy and the ideas that emerge post the beginnings of a neoliberal revolution. This is where kind of the ideas of Ayn Rand and Friedrich Hayek and Ronald Reagan and Margaret Thatcher are eventually going to take us one day. All these developments promoted grand expectations, so we've read that bit, haven't we? Many contemporaries talked as if there was almost nothing that American ingenuity in science, industry, whatever, could not accomplish. Engineers and scientists were perfecting weather satellites, rockets, solar batteries, and atomic submarines. Things atomic continued to seem promising beyond belief. Scientists at Brookhaven National Laboratory on Long Island talked of creating wonderful new hybrids of carnations in its radioactive gamma garden. Researchers at Argonne Laboratory near Chicago experimented with potatoes, bread, and hot dogs to show that irradiation kept foods fresh and germ-free. Good grief. National Geographic concluded that the atomic revolution would shape and change our lives in ways undreamed of today, and there can be no turning back. I mean, I suspect that the moment of kind of boosterism around AI, where there are those AI utopianists and optimists that believe it will, sort out everything. People like Ray Kurzweil and things like that.
When you think of skyrocketing brands like Aloe, Allbirds, or Skims, it's easy to credit their success to great products, sleek branding, and brilliant marketing. But here's the overlooked secret. The real magic lies in the engine behind the scenes, the business powering their business. For millions of brands, that engine is Shopify, making selling seamless for them and shopping effortless for us. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Aloe Yoga uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/retail, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/retail to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/retail.
Be enchanted this holiday season at Meadowlark's Winter Walk of Lights. Enjoy a leisurely half-mile walk along an elegant garden trail while sipping on a warm beverage with or without spirits. Be sure to capture memories along the way amidst a variety of sparkling holiday themes. Perfect for a date with your special someone, a night out with friends, or holiday fun with the family. Don't wait any longer. Capacity is limited and tickets will sell out. Reserve tickets for your preferred date today at winterwalkoflights.com. That's winterwalkoflights.com.
I would imagine that a lot of that will be viewed in a much more cynical light in the future, notwithstanding probably its many advantages. But it does kind of slightly echo the atomic moment, doesn't it? Biological medical researchers and doctors seem nearly omnipotent. Having developed penicillin and streptomycin in the 1940s, scientists came up with antihistamines, cortisone, and other new antibiotics in the next few years. The National Institute of Health, an insurgent government agency at its founding in the 1930s, received better congressional funding, expanding into an ever larger number of disease-specific institutes, and had to be renamed in 1948 the National Institute of Health. In 1963, a team of researchers at the University of Cambridge, England, made a spectacular breakthrough by discovering DNA, and thereby stimulating unprecedented advances in genetics and molecular biology. One of the team members, James Watson, was an American biologist. Physicians who, as late as the 1930s, had been able to do little more than diagnose people and console patients when they got too sick, found that they could now have a huge pharmacopoeia at their disposal, and they used it. In 1956, 80% of drugs being prescribed had reached the market in the previous 15 years. These included tranquilizers such as Milltown, don't give a damn pills, Time called them, which were first introduced in the mid-1950s. Sales of tranquilizers were beginning to boom by 1960, suggesting that prosperity, for all its blessings, was associated with anxieties of its own. And there's so much more to say there about mass medicalization and the kind of the meetings of diagnosis, a powerful pharmaceutical industry, and popular ideas around medicine and the overall deference that was afforded to scientists and to the medical establishment. So there I'm going to leave it for today. I hope you found that useful and interesting. And it's just great, really, to kind of explore the ways in which people reacted to and navigated and understood mass abundance. Because we often talk on this podcast about the ways in which people deal with hardship, and people react towards prosperity in interesting ways of their own. So just to let you know, I'm getting closer and closer to being able to set up on the website, explaininghistory.org. Do visit it. There's lots of really useful information on there for history students and general buffs. The event we're going to do in January, it's going to be for students of Stalin's Russia and the revolution. So more on that when I've finally got it set up. But in the next week or so, I should be able to give you some concrete thoughts on that. And we're going to be running, hopefully, events throughout 2026. So if you're a student or if you just want to listen, they'll be pretty cost effective, I think. So I'm trying to make it as accessible to everyone as I can. Anyway, more on that when it happens, and I'll catch you soon on the next Explaining History podcast. Bye-bye.
When you think of skyrocketing brands like Aloe, Allbirds, or Skims, it's easy to credit their success to great products, sleek branding, and brilliant marketing. But here's the overlooked secret. The real magic lies in the engine behind the scenes, the business powering their business. For millions of brands, that engine is Shopify, making selling seamless for them and shopping effortless for us. Upgrade your business and get the same checkout Aloe Yoga uses. Sign up for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/retail, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/retail to upgrade your selling today. Shopify.com/retail.
Get a jump on next summer with Vrbo's early booking deals. Don't wait to claim your dream summer spot, whether that includes a good porch swing or a poolside lounger. When you book early, you get the best places at the best prices. But back to the poolside loungers. With Vrbo, you don't have to reserve any loungers. They're all yours. In fact, the whole private home is yours. Book with early booking deals, and you can lounge around all summer long however you please at Vrbo.com.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Explaining History. This podcast is an independent production, and it's listener support that keeps these conversations going week after week. If you find value in the show and want to help cover the costs of research and production, please consider making a contribution. You can join our community on Patreon or make a one-off donation. Just follow the links in the show notes for this episode. Every bit of support is truly appreciated. Thanks again for listening.